Welcome to another edition of G Rated. I am your host, Gerald Bourget, and today I am joined by Totri and Max with the menorah hat. Love it.
Oh.
I see you, as they would say in Avatar.
What a start.
But as you might have guessed, we are here to talk about Avatar: The Way of Water, which is the newest blockbuster. Totri has like
Max.
tears in his eyes.
I see.
I forget. I don't know the response, man. There are so many things happen. First, they're talking to other avatars, and then they're talking to sea people, then they're talking to whales. Like I don't know. I don't know the language barrier.
We need a
man.
papyrus font for
Yeah.
your whale speak.
Exactly.
But guys, we got to see this long-awaited sequel. I think the first one came out like 9 years ago or something like that. It's been a long wait, and now we get to talk about the good, the bad of probably another box office busting movie. Just your overall thoughts to start.
Yeah. I think immediately after Max and I, because we saw it together, I told him, I'm like, the graphics were amazing. The fight scenes were amazing.
Mhm.
The storyline was very unique. And I felt like it was purposeful that you could watch a commercial for this movie and not know what the storyline was, because at the end of it, they were probably like, yeah, we're going to need a number 3 for this. This was just like, it felt like the bridge to what's probably, or feels like it's going to be the final part with like a part 3.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much exactly how I've described it to people. How the graphics are incredibly stunning. It's really crazy how they waited so long to do this sequel because they needed the right technology, I guess, to capture the water elements. But that was absolutely fascinating. Also, we watched it while partaking with OGs, and that was just absolutely incredible. So I will shout out them for that too. But that was cool. The fight scenes were amazing, but I think to Totri's point, the part that was just so weird was the dialogue, and certain parts of the movie that weren't supposed to be funny were hilarious.
Yes.
And just the dialogue, and like it's almost the anticlimacticness of, oh yeah, something serious just happened, and it's like, wait, something serious just happened, but you're talking about things that are absolutely hilarious. It just didn't match up to me. And unlike you, where you say, okay, it sets a stage for 3, we can kind of see where it's going, but I think they're going to have, I don't know how they're going to come up with enough storyline, because it's like, okay, we've already seen this tale before. How are you going to make a 3rd and a 4th one potentially?
Well, how many Pocahontases did Disney make? Because they're going to run out of material at some point. I will say, like, let's focus on the positives before we get to our negatives. So visually stunning. I think that those are the 2 trademark words that come to mind. And like the original, which I think is why it went on to become such a success, not just the graphics and the special effects, but the world building, as far as like Pandora is a place where you want to go visit. I think I read somewhere that like certain fans were depressed when they realized that Pandora is not a real fucking place. Which, I'm sorry, you're going into the movie with the wrong.
You gotta understand what you're going into here.
But like changing the setting from the forest to the ocean was a stroke of genius, because like, you know, we've all seen Titanic, but this was like masterful as far as every shot when they finally made the transition to the ocean was just like drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah, and I think they did, to your point of elaborating on the world. In the first one, it was so like centered around the forest. And I don't think there was enough of an explanation to like what the rest of that world looked like. I felt like after seeing one, everyone had this idea that, okay, this is where everything takes place. But they did a really good job, to your point, in the second one of being like trying to equate it back to this world, right, to Earth or whatever. Like you go from a country to a country and everything is unique, everything is different. I felt like that's exactly what they did in the second one, and the graphics and all of the visual elements really did that justice and helped drive that home.
Yeah, I also, I mean, like obviously the ocean was kind of the perfect environment to move the sequel to, just to expand on the world a little bit. But I also kind of liked how it incorporated, obviously the first one had those elements of colonialism in it and those environmentalist concerns. But this one I feel like was almost to the point of it being on the nose, as far as like, it was like the whaling stuff. How much we infringe on the world's natural resources with that type of stuff. I thought like, okay, so the whale speaking like it's too painful, and like Papyrus, like that got a laugh out of our movie theater. Because it was fucking funny.
Yeah.
But like the part where they're like chasing after the whale and they like kill the whale and the whale's child or offspring or whatever, that was like legitimately sad.
Yeah.
And they spent I feel like a good portion, like it felt like a 5 to 10 minute scene from start to finish of like, this is what goes into taking down something like this. And they spent a very small amount of time showing like, okay, this is all we need. This is all that actually gets used.
Right.
Just this little vial, and the guy Spider even says it. It's like, wait, we do all of this and then waste the rest. It's just wasteful, and does show, I think, some of the broader themes that, I mean, I could be mistaken, but I think like James Cameron has advocated for, but I know for sure that when he's worked with Leonardo DiCaprio, that's a very big thing with him. So it's at least a common trend in the movies and the movie stars that he works with.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I felt kind of stood out compared to the first one was I cared a little bit more about the characters this time. Like I felt like they were given more character arcs, more fleshed out storylines, like especially with his children. You know, the middle child being the outcast, the oldest child trying to like be the perfect warrior for dad. You know, Zoe Saldana, she's really good as a mocap like actor. Like that's hard to do. I couldn't have all this technology on me and like deliver a performance that makes this blue alien like an effective character. But I felt like they had more, like by the end, I cared more about the characters, some more than others. Like the Spider thing didn't work for me. Really.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any sort of attachment to Spider by the end of it.
No.
I felt like.
And like it was kind of funny because they like pulled out the Dom Toretto like family is everything kind of bullshit. But like she literally tried to kill their like surrogate son. Like
they're like, a son for a son, and like nobody flinched. There wasn't like any reaction from the kids to be like, don't do that, like that's our friend. It was just like, nah, I'm gonna cut his throat because like that's what it takes.
But then when he comes back later, when he reconvenes on the island, it's like, come here, and he like takes him under his shoulder.
Forget what happened 10 minutes ago
because souls stick together. Yeah, that was kind of funny. But I do think other than some of those quibbles, like I felt like because they spent so much time, you know, putting these characters through these gorgeous environment, it felt like more like a National Geographic kind of advertisement for Pandora. But by taking us on that journey with these characters, it made me care a lot more about these characters. Because in the first one, I think Zoe Saldana's character was the only one that I was like, okay, like they're interesting to me.
Yeah.
It was very much just like white savior complex. Here comes Sam Worthington, and now he's an avatar, and now he's gonna like. It was just kind of dumb in that way, but I felt like there was more thought put into that.
Well, I think it's really cool because, I mean, within the first, 5-10 minutes of the movies, you very quickly get the understanding of, okay, well, they've had kids. They now have 4 kids. They like have this whole family, and now it's still in survival mode. But then for the rest of the movie, you then see the different character arcs playing of, okay, you have the oldest son who has like the warrior complex, who he's trying to almost like pass the baton from his dad. You then have like the youngest son who it's like he's dealing with like the outcast kind of scenario. You have the adopted daughter who it's, okay, she has her own powers and everything like that. How do you mold into that family? And it's just cool to see all of that play out because you could have focused on any one of them, but I feel they did a good job of balancing with all the different Sully children.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one thing with the daughter that didn't get talked about enough, and we talked about this with Sean a little bit afterwards, is like she can like sense the planet, can move, and like she's a superhero, pretty much. And we're just out here still fighting with bow and arrows when she can like do all this stuff. Or when they go to save Sully and then the mom and the daughter, or the youngest child as well. And she just stops before they get there. She's just messing with the fish and stuff, and nobody questions it. Nobody's just like, hey, you're gonna come help us. It's just like, we're just gonna play with the fish for a second.
She's got her telekinetic light bright grill going on that she's like controlling with her mind, and everyone's like, you know what, just fucking
just do
her thing. The third act, to your point about that, because there were a couple of things that like they just like threw in the middle of this battle sequence. Third act was a little long, but it was incredible as far as the confrontation on the open waters. I thought that was really cool. And the first one was the same way in the air, the way that they had kind of those final fight scenes. But let's talk about some of the negatives now, because they're definitely there. I will say, for a movie that's like 3 hours and 20 minutes long, I was invested and engaged the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is not always the case in a long movie. But I feel like the inherent problem is, it's a problem and a strength, is that the ecosystem, the world itself of Pandora is more interesting than any storyline that they are giving us.
Yeah, the storyline itself felt a little, for something like, when we started, you mentioned the first one 9 years ago or whatever, right? Obviously, a good chunk of that time is spent on the graphics and everything that's getting fleshed out from a visual perspective. But when you have that long, I expect a really good storyline as well. If you're going to make me wait 9-10 years, and then not only that, but it's a 3 hour plus movie, like there's got to be something outside of the visual aspect to be fully invested in. And I felt like it was almost a really half-assed storyline to the point where, like, let's just bring back the same villain and just make him an avatar.
Can we talk about that?
Like, what?
Where did they come up with, oh yeah, he had this contingency plan for if he died, he would come back as an avatar imprinted with his own memories?
Which is like, what? I'm fine with that if this is something that you show me in the first one.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is just like
zero groundwork.
Nah. Like, we're just gonna do this. And then same thing with the scientists too. Like, what are we doing?
Right.
We're not like informing anybody that this is happening. It's just kind of like, surprise, this is what we did. Like,
we adopted a cloned avatar, maybe cloned. We don't. Okay, I'll give shouts to Sigourney Weaver, because she's 73 years old and played a teenager really well.
Yeah.
But how did, like, she was probably like 60 when the first one was happening. How did a 60-year-old Sigourney Weaver who had zero love interest in the first film get knocked up and give birth to an avatar?
Yeah.
How do we?
And they're even teasing it. It's like, oh, it could have been Ned because he's always giving her looks. And it's just like, wait, we still never address this. And then when you have this scene, fun plot twist, because it's a 3 hour movie. Literally the one part that I go and I go to the bathroom, and during the middle of it was the scene where she connects to the giving tree or whatever underwater.
The whole epilepsy
gets the flashback. So I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess, because I saw it with my other friends the next morning. So I saw Avatar.
You saw it twice?
I saw it twice.
Oh my gosh.
In a span of 18 hours, 6 hours of my life, and 18 hours was of Avatar. And so I watched that scene, and I was like, how does any of this connect? You literally get a flashback of, hey, this is my mom. And then it's like, oh, wait, she's talking to me. Oh, no, she blurs out. Like, we have no resolution on that. So it's just weird, man.
I wonder if, and again, this is totally hypothetical or just, I guess, out there. Like, I wonder if from the first one, right, when she died in the whole like tree scene at the very end, I wonder if the planet impregnated her. Like, that's where my head went immediately as to this is why she has all these powers, is because the planet, I guess, of Pandora is the father, but like I don't know.
Very unclear. She's very like Virgin Mary of freaking Pandora kind of thing. And was it her body that was like floating in that kind of chamber? So you could be onto something there. I feel like I worry that this is going to be like the main plot line of Avatar 3.
I hope
like
not.
Kiri's like background, because it was very unintentionally left unresolved.
Yeah. And I thought the funny part for me was the whole, like, they just kind of dismissed it.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, she's Caesar. She's epileptic.
Right.
I don't know many people with epilepsy that can just control shit like that. And I don't know how many avatars have epilepsy. Like, I have no idea.
It was just a very bizarre thing to throw into the film with like zero payoff. Like, obviously we see at the end that she saves everybody who's like about to drown by directing her light bright krill to go like find them.
Light bright krill,
give them a path home. But like, other
she
than that,
essentially made lights, is what she did.
Yeah. She like lit up the ocean. That's cool, but like, it didn't show her like overcoming anything. Like, it was basically just like, oh, it could kill her if she does it again. And then she did it again and nothing happened.
Like, her biggest struggle was almost like the teenage vibe of like, oh, how do I fit into this family?
Exactly.
Oh, my mom, she's in a distant place. I can feel her, but like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, that's what we're taking from this.
Yeah. I get the story arc, and you want this character to have, you know, the ups and downs. And at the very end, they overcome something like amazing. But like, I felt like, again, going back to like a half-assed storyline, that was the case with her character arc. To your point, it was like, okay, like, I get it. She's going through the teenage like angst and issues that teens everywhere go through. But like, I don't even think there was enough of that because so much was focused on the outcast child.
Right.
To it was like a side story in like the main meat of it all, and it just wasn't done like properly.
Well, I think like, with the first movie, the big plot line is, okay, we are coming into this world and Jake Sully has to like save it. That was the entire movie, one storyline, easy to follow. While you have this big second one, which is, hey, guys come back, he's trying to wipe out his family, I have to save them. You then have almost too many different subplots, and it's like, how do you follow everything and do it its justice? And that's the one to me where it fell through the cracks.
Yeah. And it's kind of wild to say about a movie that's, again, 3 hours and 20 minutes that they maybe had too much going on. I like I said, I think the character arcs were much better, but because it had so much to juggle, the plot suffered, which compared to the first one, like the first one is just basically Dances with Wolves meets Ferngully. So like they had all kinds of shit that they just basically, we're going to take this and that's going to be our plot. This one didn't really have that. And so they like the main conflict was just rehashing a villain as an avatar, and
it was the same thing. We're like, we're just going to do this over, but we're going to make him stronger this time. And he's going to have friends. Like, and first off, they spent like this whole time, like the like showing that the villain was coming back as an avatar with like all these other Marines that had died or whatever.
Right.
And they're supposed to be the best. And these fuckers got wiped like super fast.
Yeah.
Like they did not stand a chance.
Neytiri and Jake Sully cleared them out in
in minutes. In minutes. It was crazy. I will say like we've already talked about, the fight scenes, the graphics, amazing. And you had brought up that last fight scene toward the end of the movie, like in the water, and the dialogue from Sully at the end there. I thought, I loved it, where it was just like, okay, let's do this then. And then just kind of went off. I'm like, okay, like, thank you for sparing us this and not extending this. And then what do? They keep him alive, so they extend it anyways. So,
and I think obviously they intentionally tried to give the villain more depth this time, because the first one is just like prototypical military, we're going to conquer everything, colonial, what he represents. This one, it's like, okay, he's a clone who technically, again, we don't know how the colonel had a kid either. I don't remember a kid being in the first Avatar. So children are just springing out of previous characters for no reason.
Apparently they went missing for about 5 to 10 minutes and then just...
Pandora's a very fertile place. But they tried to...
soil.
Not the soil. But they tried to like give him depth by connecting him to this character that we didn't really care about in the first place. And I think that was kind of strange. And it was also strange how Spider was like, he hated him, but then halfway through, he's like, oh, Dad's right.
He felt like very easily swayed through this whole thing.
Well, it's to the point of like that last fight scene where it's like, literally, there's an alternate universe where Jake Sully, like, he's like, I will find your family and I will kill him, goes full Liam Neeson on him. But it's where he walks away off the boat and you are spared that 30-45 minutes of that underwater fight scene because nothing would change. The guy is still alive regardless. The Sully family escapes, but then the kid Spider, it's not like, oh, I survived, son, you saved my life, come with me, and then he goes with him, he joins the dark side. That would be, to me, if you're going to extend that scene, that would be a logical thing to happen. But he's like, nah, never mind, I'm going back to the Sully. It's like, it doesn't make any sense.
It was very like that scene and then the end, right, where you've got the dad alive and then Spider. It was very Star Wars, like Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader, like, this is your time now. So I'm waiting to see that in the next one. I'm interested to see how much time passes in that one storyline versus this one, because it obviously was a significant amount of time for them to have like a whole family and stuff. So like, are we getting like a young adult Spider, or are we going to be left with like, okay, it takes place right after and you've got like a 12-year-old who is now like the center of all this thing. And again, I wasn't emotionally attached to Spider, to the dad, like, which is, I felt like what they tried to do, right, by like exploring that, giving him a son, the father-son bond.
Yeah.
At the end of it, I was just left with like, okay, I didn't care about you anyways. Like,
I think you're also jaded because you asked like, wait, did this 12-year-old either he had tattoos, which how is a 12-year-old having
did he have
full body
tattoos, or was
it paint? That doesn't come off in the water at all.
There were some very borderline like cultural appropriation things with that character.
I
like
had no idea. Yes. Oh my goodness.
And it's like, okay, what are we doing here, James? But
what are we doing,
what are we
James?
doing here, James? You mentioned the elite force that was with the main bad guy and how quickly they got wiped out, which brings me to one of the things that stood out. And we mentioned the unintentionally funny moments, but every time one of those other characters spoke, it was one of those moments. They're like, hell yeah, or hoorah. And it was like nothing
We
else.
couldn't have any better actors. You guys are just going with like the prototypical, stereotypical like military stuff here.
Yeah.
We're about to murder these kids. Let me blow a bubble gum and then pop it on screen. Like what?
Yeah.
What was the point of that?
Down to the avatars having buzz cuts.
Yeah.
Down to those avatars having buzz cuts, man. Like the thought it was very like cartoonish.
Yes.
Almost like, come on, dude. 10 years and these are the bad guys?
And the dialogue they came up with is hoorah, or hell yeah.
Like that's all we got. That's all we're giving them.
Favorite unintentionally funny moment from the movie.
The top one was the Australian New Zealand whatever is the guy, the captain who is all right. We come out here. Where can I hunt? Where can I hunt this giant whale?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you're building up to something bad's gonna happen. His arm gets stuck, and we all know what's about to happen. And when that dude's shoulder gets ripped off and flying, I know about shoulder injuries. You know, if you see me in the sling, and I do have a soft spot in my heart for someone's shoulder getting ripped out violently. But goodness gracious, when that thing went flying, we were laughing hysterically because this dude's just like, oh yeah, cool, just a bloody stump just flying through the air.
Yeah, that was brutal.
I think for me, it wasn't even like avatar to avatar, a human avatar. It was when the avatars were talking to the fucking whales, and we're just sign languaging about like their pregnancies and birth cycles, and like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in forever. Like, bro, what are we doing?
So like, I didn't mind that part as much because it gave an emotional connection for when the whale died, but the part when they're like talking about the whale's past and its backstory, and it's just like in this giant papyrus font, it's like, it's too painful. I laughed a little bit.
Oh my gosh, we haven't even talked about that. Like, dude,
bro, what is happening?
You can trust me. You can trust me. I'm an outcast too.
Right. Like,
and then I'm just gonna like come into my mouth and I'll show you. Like that's pretty much what it was.
They connected on a much deeper level that I don't think anyone was anticipating. The other part was at the very beginning when they're being introduced to the Metkaina, the water tribe, and like the teenage love interest for the middle child like gets out of the water and like was in a very sexualized way.
Yes, yeah.
It was like, we're not gonna have another Avatar sex scene, are we, in this one? I can't do another Navi sex scene.
As soon as that came on, I just like picture like the Lion King in my head, and can you feel the love?
Well, I turned to Sean when she gets out of the water like that. I'm like, why are we making aliens that look like this?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, it was very sexualized. There was a guy behind me that started laughing when that happened because I think he was uncomfortable. And I'm sitting there with my fiance and I'm like, I don't know what to do right now. This is very strange. Yeah, and then again, like the spider being a Pandora Tarzan thing didn't really work for me. Any other qualms or quibbles with the sequel?
I think again, if you haven't seen the movie, go see it because from a visual perspective and the graphics and the editing, like it is something you should definitely see. And I think it's one of the most visually amazing movies that I've seen as of late.
Visually stunning.
Stunning. However, again, maybe take an OG so you can get through the storyline. But I think that's really it. I'm interested to see how long it takes them to potentially come out with a number 3 too.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the highs of the visuals, the fight scenes. That stuff was incredible. Like in my mind, even more stunning than the first one, and I thought those were amazing. But the contrast is the dialogue and the storyline, like kind of what we're all saying, was lacking a lot. And you're thinking when you fill up that 3-hour space, unless you're having a fight scene or something every other minute, you're going to have to fill that space somehow. And you can just tell, like, some of the dialogue scenes, it's just kind of dragging there a bit.
Hoorah. But yeah, like I said, I think the first act was a little slow. Getting us to the ocean took a little while. Also, it didn't make sense why the colonel like wouldn't just attack his forest people if he wanted to draw them out. Why did he have to wait to, these ocean people that he's known for 5 minutes, let's attack the surrounding villages and I didn't get that.
Oh yeah, one more thing on that. Sully, from like a thinking perspective, right? You leave your forest family because you don't want them to get attacked.
Yeah.
You go to the water tribe. What the fuck do you think's gonna happen, bro? Like they're just gonna leave you be?
Yeah.
Like what? Like there was zero thought process as to, okay, this is the potential outcome of me going here. And it was exactly what everybody thought was gonna happen of him leaving. Like, okay, we're just gonna find you and attack you there.
It really raced through that stuff because it knew that like we want to get to the ocean. Like, let's get to the fucking ocean. And it raced through like they weren't prepared for the humans to come back at all. Like the first 5 minutes of the movie, their shit just gets wiped out because they landed. Like, I know that you're like a forest tribe people. You're not going to fire bow and arrows up into the sky, but like nothing
at all.
No scouts at least. But yeah, like I said, like the visual spectacle, it felt like a National Geographic film for the ocean. Like, in general, it was really cool in that regard. And it was engrossing for the majority of its runtime. Like I was never bored watching a 3 hour and 20-minute movie. Final scores out of 10.
You go ahead, Max. You start.
Oh man. Gosh, I was thoroughly entertained by it, even with the lacking parts here. I'd give it like it just feels generous. I'm giving like an 8. Okay. It was a solid movie. I mean, again, I saw it twice in an 18
hours of his weekend watching this movie.
Yes, Friday night and Saturday morning. It was good. Definitely some parts here and there. I think I almost want to come back to this after Avatar 3 and see like how does this stack up when we see the next edition of this, if we see the next edition of this.
Yeah. To be fair, I'd probably rank the first one like a solid probably 8.5. I try and think of these movies when I'm like taking out the best part, would it still be a good movie? And if you take away the visual aspects of this movie, it is probably a really bad movie. So I would probably give it like a 6.5.
6.5.
Probably a 6.5.
Wow. I'm probably going to go with an 8 out of 10. I think the first one for me was a visual spectacle that the plot was very derivative, and this one was more a visual spectacle where the plot wasn't derivative. It was just dumb. So at least I'll give them bonus points for trying to think about that. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this latest edition of G-Rated. Thank you everyone for watching. And until next time, keep it G-Rated.